Che here, the No Spoon Podcast. Thank you for checking out my channel. If you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe and turn on your post notifications so that you don't miss out on the latest content. Also, like and share with as many people as possible. And if you got an opinion or something that you just want to add to the conversation, I want to hear about it down in the comments section. Until then, enjoy the video. What's going on, everybody? Che here of the No Spoon Podcast. Just checking in with you guys with another video. If you have not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so right now. Also, don't forget to smash that like button and share this with as many people as possible. Let's get into it. Matt Walsh, for those of you who don't know, is a social political commentator with the Daily Wire. He is best known for his recent documentary, What is a Woman?, where he challenged transgender issues and gender ideology by proposing the simple question is, what is a woman? Since people on the gender ideology side, they say that a woman is somebody who identifies as a woman, which really isn't an answer, but that's the basis of his documentary. It was groundbreaking. It was controversial. Obviously, it made a lot of people upset, and a lot of other people appreciated it. Well, he went on the Joe Rogan Experience recently, right? And if you guys haven't watched it, watch the interview. It's very interesting, and I'm going to talk about certain points. The first 2 hours of the interview, he talks about the what is a woman debate. He talks about transgenderism, the gender ideology, and so on and so forth. It went pretty smoothly, basically because Rogan agrees with him to a certain extent. I don't know if he agrees with him all the way, but he agrees with him to a certain extent. Rogan himself had got into some controversy when a biological male who identified as a woman competed in the UFC against a biological female, and Rogan opposed that for obvious reasons, right? So to a certain extent, that first 2 hours, they went back and forth. It was relatively smooth, but the last hour went a little different. See, Rogan asked Walsh about his what are the issues besides gender that he also felt strongly about and that he fought the culture war over. And he said obviously gender is number one. He said life, abortion, that's number two, and the third is marriage. And so that's where Rogan kind of pressed him on his stance on marriage. Walsh is a staunch conservative. He is a proclaimed Catholic. He espouses Christian values. So naturally, he does not agree with gay marriage or marriage being between anything other than a man and a woman, right? And so Rogan kind of challenged that belief. And so I don't think that Walsh handled it right. Now, I'm not trying to, disparage Walsh. I think he has good points. He points, a lot of the points I agree with. I just think that the way he went about this interview, he missed the mark. And so what I'm trying to do here with this video is kind of fill in that gap that I think that him and a lot of other people do, right? Especially when it comes to this issue. So I'm going to play some clips, react to them, and then we'll go from there, and I'll tell you, and then I will fill you in on where I think people miss the mark when it comes to this issue and a lot of issues. And I think if we talked about this more and we put this out there more, it would make things a whole lot simpler and a whole lot easier, and it just kind of solidifies our argument and why we believe what we believe, right? So this is the first clip. Let me play this.
Is marriage fundamentally a procreative male and female union or not? There's not really much of a compromise position there.
There's not a compromise in gay men that want to be married. They're in love and they want to formalize their bond so they could see their partner if there's a medical emergency or if there's a death where you assign assets to your loved ones.
Well, that's not a compromise on the fundamental definition of marriage, because that's the question that lies underneath all this.
Well, marriage is a legal union between people who love each other, right? Isn't that what it is?
And for what purpose? Like, why do we need a union? Why?
Because they want it to be solidified. They want it to be carved in stone. They want to say, this is not just a person that I love. This is my life partner.
Right. But why, as a society, why do we need to solidify or make official a union between people who love each other? Like, if you're with someone you love them, then why isn't that? Like, why do we? What purpose does marriage actually serve in society? What is it doing for society?
But it's not necessarily for society. It's for the individual's comfort. If two people decide to stay together and have children and don't ever get married, that's okay too. I mean, we don't have a law against that. So if two people decide that they want to be joined in union and they want it to be legal, they want to really commit. I'm committing so hard, I'm going to bring lawyers involved, and we're going to sign papers, and we're going to go over the terms of this.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think it is just personal. It is a public. It is also a public institution.
Sure,
that's what we're talking about. You want the public to recognize this. If it was just personal, then we wouldn't even be having the conversation, because people are, loving whoever they're loving, and that's it. There's no way to control that, and it is what it is.
So they get into this definition of marriage and why marriage is important, and Walsh states that it is the union that precludes or it precedes procreation, right? Now, obviously, you don't need to be married to have kids. It happens all the time, right? And I don't think that he really gets into the why it's necessary that there's a bond and there's a union. In later parts of it, they talk about divorce and how divorce kind of is eating away at marriage as an institution, which I agree with, right? I think that marriage is something that binds people together, right? I mean, people can have children out of wedlock, but that wedlock kind of gives you something to stand on. It gives you, it's a vow. It's a unifying bond between two people to say that we are going to stay together. I think that divorce waters marriage down. We give up too easily because something becomes difficult, it becomes uncomfortable, and we become that type of society that we want to kind of nurture and coddle everything and everyone, and any type of discomfort we run from, right? That's what I see as being the biggest threat to marriage as an institution. I think marriage is a good thing. I think it's good that two people can get together that actually know each other, that actually care about each other, that love each other, and that can bring a family into being, and that there's a binding agreement between the two that gives kind of a safety and protection to the children and to that family unit, that ensures that they're going to stay together and see that them being raised. So I agree with how Walsh was putting that, but Rogan then throws other things out there. Then how come two gay people can't do it, right? And Walsh, they kind of go back and forth to this definitional thing. And once you're going to see throughout this, right? And especially if you watch the whole thing, that there's a difference between what should be legally acceptable and what should be morally acceptable. Morally acceptable goes more to the culture issue, right? How do we accept that? How do we view things in terms of culture as a society? And then there's legal issues. What should we make legal? Walsh doesn't do a good job of distinguishing between the two, either because he is kind of flustered with this whole conversation, or he believes that certain things should be illegal, right? And this is one of those things, right? So let me play another clip, and I think on this clip he kind of gets to the point that I'm going to get to, but not really. The
context in which the procreative union occurs. Marriage is the foundation for the family. It's something that is reserved for that, because the male-female union has this capacity to create life, whereas no other union has that capacity. And so it is a different kind of thing, and it makes sense to call it something different. It's like if human society were to collapse overnight and we all woke up with an amnesia and didn't remember anything about what happened before, and we're rebuilding society from scratch, and we look around and we see that, oh, there are some couplings over here that have this weird habit of creating people, and there are other couplings where there are no people being created, we would probably call that something different. It's a different kind of thing. It's also more important to society. Like, society needs that. You're going to keep society going because you're creating people. And that's what marriage was. It was the context for that procreative union.
See, to me, he kind of gets on it right there. He kind of starts to hit the mark, especially when he talks about how we have to start over, right? And which I think that when we think about these issues, we have to go back to the beginning, and that gives us more of an understanding of our essence and what is appropriate and what is inappropriate, because we go back to who we are stripped of everything. And so, like he's saying there, if that was the case, if we would go back to absolutely nothing, obviously, as a matter of evolution, we would have to procreate with each other, male and female, and that couldn't happen with male and male. Like I said, he doesn't really go further into that, and this is the point that I'm going to try to make. I'm going to play one more clip for you right here, and then I'll take you back to this one to show you what the point that I'm trying to make, and I think that it will help more. But on this clip right here, Rogan kind of stumps him, right? He kind of gets him on the ropes, and you know, the thing about this interview, like I said, this last hour, Matt Walsh is usually a pretty confident person. He's pretty sure of his responses, and it just doesn't seem that way. And I'll tell you exactly why I think that is in a second. Let's play this last clip.
Marriage is a certain thing, which is the context for procreation, for the building of the nuclear family.
What about people that get married that don't have kids? Are you opposed to that? What if they get married, they decide, you know what, we don't need kids, I'm going to get fixed. You get your tubes tied, let's travel the world.
Well, what do you mean am I opposed to it? I mean, I think that every married couple should be open to life.
But what if they don't want to? Are you opposed to them being married? If marriage is only for procreation and to bond a family together, what about people that are deeply in love that never want to have children?
I don't think it's not only procreation, but that is one of the fundamental definitional aspects of it. Of course, there's more to marriage just than that.
And what about people that are infertile? They fall in love and they realize that they can have babies and they don't really necessarily want to adopt. Is that okay for them to be married? Because then by definition, marriage falls into a completely different thing, because then it's a bond of love. It's a union of love.
Sure. I mean, that doesn't change the nature of marriage, though. It's a little bit like I say that what's the definition of a woman? Well, a woman is someone who by her nature can conceive children in her womb and bear children. And then the response is always, well, what about women who are infertile? Does that destroy your definition of woman? And it doesn't, because you know it's still a woman's nature to bear children. Not every woman will, and there will be disease and infertility and old age and all these things that will preclude that. But it's still of her nature to do so. And I would say the same thing for marriage. I mean, it is natural in a marriage for procreation to occur. It's not always going to happen in reality, though. But that's still one of the natural functions of marriage. And married couples who can't conceive children, there are other ways to be parents, like adoption, for example,
if they want to. Right. Sure. But if people want to be married and don't want to ever have children, are you opposed to them being married?
Well, I wouldn't advocate a law that would prevent it.
But would it change the definition of what their marriage is to you, because they don't want to have a family? They just want to have a loving bond?
I think this would be a couple that is rejecting one of the fundamental aspects of marriage, and that they should be open to life. I would hope that in the future they would be, but
see, that's the thing about it. You know, if you're going to say that marriage, the fundamental purpose of marriage is to procreate, then this is the argument. Well, what about people that don't want to procreate? What about people that can't procreate? Are they no longer married? And then if you say, well, they're still married because it's a male and a female, then what's the difference between two males or two women? You know what I'm saying? Like that's how the argument goes. The point that he misses, and the point to a lot of different things, that point that I've been telling you that I'm going to make here, right? What is the basis of morality? Because this is a morality issue. Is homosexuality right or is it wrong? Right? Is it moral or is it immoral? That's the point that this all comes down to, right? I'll play at the end. I'm going to play another clip, and to me, this is also a problem, right? Religious people believe in morality, and they believe in morality as determined by their prescribed religion, right? A lot of people, like, let's say, for example, a Christian believes that killing another human being is wrong because it says in the Bible, thou shalt not kill. If you ask them why, God said so, and that's the answer, right? But to a non-religious person, that doesn't satisfy, because they simply just don't believe in that. If I don't believe in the Bible, then I don't believe that that's why we shouldn't do certain things. See, so on the ultra conservative, ultra religious right, they have certain laws and regulations and morals that are determined by God. They do not question those things, and most of the time you do not even see those things. People don't even go deeper into the why issue, because that's just what it is, and that's just how it is. On the ultra liberal left, you have more of this, and anything goes, and morality is relative to the time. So at one time we can say that homosexuality was wrong, but today it's right. And both, one to me just doesn't explain, and the other one is wrong, because they don't have the same basis that I'm going to give you right now. If we look at morality, right, we look at moral laws and moral codes, right? Let's start with thou shalt not kill, right? Okay, why? That seems obvious. You shouldn't kill another human being, but do we ever get into that question and go deeper? Like, why shouldn't we kill? Well, if you think about it, if I kill this person and then that person comes and kills me, and then my family members go and kill them, and then they go kill, back and forth, bloodshed after bloodshed after bloodshed, and that continues to perpetuate and continues to go, then we live in a society where only the strong survive and only the might wins, and those that are better at killing wins. And if that keeps going and that keeps going and perpetuates, and more and more and more, then we're left with the ultimate killer at the end. And we're also left with no more human beings, right? We killed everything off, right? If killing is okay, and killing is an acceptable way of dealing with problems, so we can't have killing, right? Thou shalt not steal. Why shouldn't we steal? Well, we can say stealing is unjust. It's taking something that you didn't earn on your own merit, and it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the person that earned it, however they earned it, right? And if you steal from me, then it gives me right to steal from you. And then if I steal from you, then you want to defend yourself, and then you kill me, and then I kill, the next person comes, and it goes back and forth, and we end up with wars and things like that. More killing. More killing means less people. We cannot survive and keep going forward, right? What about other things like thou shalt not bear false witness, lying and stuff like that? Why is that wrong? Well, if I lie to you, I tell you I'm going to do something for you, and then I don't do it, then you don't trust me. And if you don't trust me, then we can't work together, and we can't do business, and commerce falls apart because nobody trusts each other, because everybody's trying to get over on each other and things of that nature, right? So we can't lie to each other. That's something that's wrong. And the reason, because if we can't do business with each other, if we can't trust each other, if we can't barter and trade with each other, then it makes us less efficient. And if we are less efficient in how we survive, then we can't survive. If you look at all our moral codes go down to one thing and one thing only. They are there to ensure that we have our best interest and our best interest to survive. It's evolution, right? It is what every species is trying to do. It is trying to make copies of themselves in subsequent generations. And we're trying to survive. This is what we do. Self-preservation. We want to preserve ourselves so that our species, our DNA, can continue to survive. This is why legacy is such an important thing to us as human beings. We want to continue to pass it on. We want the next generation to continue and make it better and more efficient. Nature does this. We do this. This is part of who we are. So when we look at morality, moral codes, ethics, they are in place to ensure that we have a harmonious society. And that harmonious society is there so that we can thrive and survive in the best possible, most efficient way possible. Right? That's it. So when asking this question, when we're saying, why should marriage be between a man and a woman, right? The answer is because it is a moral thing, because morality should lead us to survival. If human beings do not procreate, then we do not survive. Now you're going to say, what difference does it make? If somebody decide, if they're gay, if they be with somebody else and they have a same-sex relationship, that's not going to threaten survival. That in and of itself is not going to threaten survival. Just like killing one person is not going to threaten our survival, right? However, if this metastasizes and it gets bigger and it becomes socially acceptable to become the norm, then yes, it does become a threat to our survival, right? It most certainly will. So if, for example, all of humanity decided that killing is okay and we started to kill each other off, we would not eventually, maybe not this generation, we wouldn't kill everybody at once, but in the next generation we would get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller in numbers until we would become extinct. We know this instinctively, right? So if let's say half the population became gay and they did not procreate, right? Then our numbers would eventually get smaller and smaller and smaller. And if this idea that homosexuality is acceptable continues to proliferate, then eventually, let's just say we all decided to do that. Every single person in the world decided, you know what, I'm just going to be with somebody of the same sex. Where would the next generation come from? Now, obviously, technology is evolving to where we can do that type of thing, surrogacy, in vitro fertilization and all these different things, but that leads to other moral dilemmas in how we raise the next generation. In a two-parent household, is that of male and female, is that more conducive? Is that better? I would say so, but that's a different conversation. But what Matt Walsh has to do is say, look, I believe that marriage should be between a man and a woman because procreation should be between a man and a woman, right? And that we should make conducive male and female families. We should make that conducive to our survival because it is. Because you need a man and a woman to procreate and continue on with the next generation, right? So if we allow this proliferation of same-sex relationships to continue, then we will go extinct. The basis of all morality is on survival. That's it. So I think it's wrong. Homosexuality is wrong if practiced on a mass scale, but that's what moral laws and regulations do, is they prevent things from getting to a mass scale, right? That's why we say, thou shalt not lie. Now, there's a difference between what should be legal and what should be moral. There's not laws against lying, per se, right? There is, to a certain extent, if contract law comes into play and this and that. But as just telling a lie is not illegal, right? It is immoral, right? I don't think that the state should intervene on everything, because then you just give the state more power and the state begins to wield its power that benefits itself and not the people, right? But as a culture, what do we accept? If we say that homosexuality is okay, then we allow that ideology to continue, and that proliferates, and that gets on to the next generation, and then eventually it becomes a threat to our extinction. Just like murder, just like stealing, just like adultery. Adultery does the same thing. If I sleep with somebody else's wife, or I have children out of wedlock, right? Then you have children growing up without a father or without a mother, without a two-parent nuclear family, which is the best way to raise children, right? And that leads to more moral degeneracy. It leads to a whole list of social ills and things like that, right? we cannot have disharmony with disharmony within our society, because that is steps in the way of our survival. Morality is based on that. And I think a lot of people, especially religious people, they don't speak on that issue. They don't get into the what's the underlying objective of all these moral values, and that's just survival. It's simple. Homosexuality doesn't vibe with survival. It just doesn't. It doesn't produce anything. But neither does masturbation. You can make that argument too, and we can say that that's not morally wrong as well, right? We can say a lot of things are morally wrong, but fundamentally, a relationship between a man and woman produces life, right? It just does. That's just the way things are. Now, there's a clip that I'm going to play right here. And to me, this is kind of telling of a lot of religious people, especially people that, especially when you get in front of non-religious people, secular people, when you get into a big audience like Joe Rogan's audience. This is not a religious audience. These are, I'm not saying not religious people don't listen to him, but this is not an overtly religious show. Joe Rogan doesn't proclaim any religion or anything like that. He's a pretty secular guy. So I think that people like Matt Walsh, or religious people, they tend to play to the audience as opposed to their values. And I'm going to give you an example of that right here. I'll play this clip. This is the last one, and then we'll close out.
It seems that people are inherently gay. There are people out there that are just gay. Do you think that those people that are just gay should not engage in gay activities? They should engage in gay sex and gay love?
Yeah, I'm a Christian, so I believe in Christian sexual morality, which is that the sex belongs within the bonds of a marriage, and marriage is between a man and a woman. So,
if you had a conversation with a gay man, and you were going to tell them what you thought morally was correct to do, would you tell them to not be gay?
It certainly wouldn't be as simple as that. I don't think you just walk up to someone and tell them.
What would you give them as options?
I mean, if you have that proclivity, it's not as simple as just someone to say to you, don't be that anymore.
Right. So what would you tell them to do?
Just like, if you want to stop premarital sex, it's not as simple to just say, oh, don't do it. It's to actually live according to the sexual morality doctrines of the Christian faith, for example, is really difficult.
See, the thing is what Matt Walsh should have said is, yes, that's what I would tell them. That's your belief. See, I don't like when you deflect into say, well, I'm a Christian and I believe in Christian values. Do you believe in that or not? If a person came to you and said, I'm gay, should I have gay sex? You should say no, if that's your beliefs. And that's just that, right? Like all this, like I said, they play to the audience. Like, that people are going to be like, oh man, this whole thing now going around is that there's a Christian nationalism, or the religious right is fanatics and they want to make this into theocracy and this and that. But we're talking about your own personal opinions. Your own personal opinions is that homosexuality is wrong. So therefore, if a person came to you and said, hey, I feel like I'm gay and I want to engage in that activity, then you should say no, you should not do that. Any more so than a person who says, hey, I feel like inclined to do drugs. Should I do that? You should say no, you should not do that. Like, that's my belief that it's wrong, therefore you don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like any other sin according to a religious person. Any other sin is a sin. You refrain from sin. You control your flesh, as you speak. You control your desires, right? And you have to bring those into captivity, and so that you do not act upon those things, right? Because that's the sin, and then you start to work on that process. That's the answer he should have given. But you're on the Joe Rogan Experience, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's so insensitive, that's not right, and it's going to turn a lot of people off. That's my opinion. You know what I mean? I think you need to stand on your principles if that's what you believe, and you should be able to say it. I think you should also be able to have arguments with people that aren't religious and not use religion. I think that I don't think that anything that I've said denies the existence of God or faith or anything like that. If anything, I think it supports it and it strengthens it, because I don't think that God did anything arbitrarily. I think he did things on purpose and for a reason. And so our job is to understand those things so that we can teach them to the next generation, so that generation can internalize that and then use it for their own benefit. Now, I'm not trying to say that there's like gay people are bad people or anything like that. What I'm saying is that if we base our moralities on survival, and all morals are based on survival and how we survive as a species, then yes, that would be something that's not conducive to our survival. And the problem is not in the act in and of itself. The problem is that the proliferation and how it gets bigger and how it grows into something to where if everybody decided I'm going to take part in that practice and I'm not going to practice in that which is natural, then we don't survive. It's really that simple. I don't believe that the state should make laws against these things. I think two consenting adults should be able to do whatever they want to do. But as a culture, again, as a culture, this is a different type of argument. For example, I made a video not too long ago about canceling hip hop. I do not think, and I said it specifically, I do not think that any entity, especially the government or anything else, should come in and intervene and say, you can't do this and you can't do that, that you should not be able to sell these type of records. You should not be able to talk about these things on these type of records. I do not believe that. But I believe as a culture, we should reject those things that are immoral and degenerate. That's what I believe. I believe that when we give the state the power to do so, that their power expands and then they use it to benefit themselves. And we should limit that power. See, two things can be right at the same time. And I don't think Walsh did a great job of kind of explaining that distinguishing between the two. I don't think that he did. But I think that we need to be able to have these conversations in a rational and logical way and get down to what the core essence of things. Now, if you don't think that morality is based on survival, then I would be open to what is it for? Why should we not do these things? Is it just to be nice to each other? Is it just to live in harmony? And even if it is to live in harmony, then why? Why do we have to live in harmony? Why can't I choose to live in chaos? You know, there's a lot of different things that go in. There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of topics that we could touch on. I would love to hear about what you have to say in the comment section. I know this is kind of a controversial issue. I know this is going to ruffle some feathers. But like I said, if there's any other things that we can base our moral stances on, I'm open to hearing it, because I'm always open to hearing different perspectives and perspectives that I think that, and if I'm wrong on something, then I'm wrong on something, right? But I would love to hear it. But that's my take. I don't think he did a great job on this. Matt Walsh does a great job on a lot of other things, but on this, I just wasn't seeing it. He seemed to be kind of disheveled at times and kind of had his feathers ruffled a little bit. All in all, he does pretty good work, so I'm not, you know, I think I saw What Is a Woman. I thought it was great. It was great. But that's just my take on that. Until the next time, you guys take care. Don't forget, before you log off of here, subscribe to this channel. Watch another video. I got a lot of other videos out there, a lot of the content. Like this video, share it with as many people, and comment on it. If you disagree, I want to hear why, and we can have that conversation in the comment section. Maybe I'll do another video in rebuttal to it, and we can have that healthy discourse, because I think that's what it's all about, us having a healthy conversation. Like I said, if I'm wrong, I'm always open to being right. I always want to be right. So until then, my name is Che. This is No Spoon Podcast.